Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Galaxy Tech Dark Lord here. This shall be the last deck profile of the format because I'm pretty sure that soon the next ban list will be announced, so I won't do any deck profiles until then, which I'm planning to do the Blue Eyes deck profile update as the first one for that format. So until then, you'll have to do with this one. It is a Reactor deck profile with a few surprises thrown in. It corresponds to the current format, but with hopes of the next format as well. So I hope you guys like it, and I'll get right into it. So we start off with the 3 copies of Black Salvo. This is your go-to tuner monster to summon Trap Reactor from the graveyard, and then you go into things like any level 7 that you want. Intentionally, this was for Dark Strike Fighter originally. It got hit by the ban list quite quickly, but with seeing the OCG ban list for next format, Dark Strike Fighter is coming off the list with a reprinted effect, and so I'm hoping that they do that with the TCG as well, in which this card with Trap Reactor Wi-Fi will be very good. So then we have the 3 copies of Summon Reactor SK. This is what you use to go into Big Daddy Flying Fortress Skyfire. It burns your opponent once per turn for every time they normal summon, or no, it's burns your opponent with every with 800 damage the first time a monster is summoned. So any summon for the first summon that they do, that's 800 points of damage. He can also negate 1 attack per turn, and he's what you use to go into Flying Fortress Skyfire. So then we have 2 copies of Spell Reactor RE, and so once per turn he inflicts 800 points of damage when your opponent activates a spell card. It doesn't have to be the first time, it's just any time, once per turn. So then we have 2 copies of Trap Reactor. You can guess what this does. It burns with 800 points of damage once per turn when your opponent activates a trap. So then we have 2 copies of Flying Fortress Skyfire. You can discard this with Machina Fortress if you have it in your hand, because we do run it in this deck, and you can still play it later because of because of Summer Reactor's effect. So it's a 3000 beta. It burns for a lot. It can destroy stuff. It locks. It's like a field lockdown. So there is a good reason for running that, and that is the reason. So then we have 2 copies of Machina Fortress, because this is a machine deck. You can discard basically every monster in this deck is a potential target for Machina Fortress to discard. So why wouldn't you run it in this deck? Then we have the Machina Gear Frame to go with it, because it searches when it's normal summon. It searches at Machina. The only other Machina in this deck is Machina Fortress, so that makes this card ideal when you summon it. Then we have 2 copies of Gear Gear Accelerator. If you control a face-up Gear Gear monster, you can special summon it from your hand in defense mode, and when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target a Gear Gear monster in your graveyard and accept that card and then add it to your hand. So it's a very good card to get off with some X-Seizers or something. And then we have 2 copies of Gear Gear. I only have the basic one. I would run the other ones, but I don't have them. So that's it for now. And then we have an Unknown Synchron, because it has a good ability to special summon itself if you can, like a Cyber Dragon, and it's a tuner. So you can use this with Machina Fortress to go into Dark Flat Top, which is what you use to summon out a lot of your reactors. So, and then we have also a Genix Ally Birdman, just because it's a Birdman and it's a very good card, and it's also a machine. So that's the monster lineup done and dusted. For the spells, because this is a pure machine deck, we have 3 copies of Solidarity. If all the monsters in your graveyard are of the same type, your monsters gain 800 attack. So there's no reason not to run this card in the deck. It's a very good power up, especially because some of these cards are a bit weak. So then we have 2 copies of Iron Cool. because this is you can use this to recycle your machines from your graveyard and summon them to the field, and then you have that turn to do anything with them really. Then, because it's machines, limiter removal, don't need to explain that. Then 2 copies of MST, because it's MST and this format's a bit more back row heavy, as I've said in almost every deck profile that I've done this format. And then 1 Book of Moon to finish that off, because it's the OTK stopper. Then we finish with traps to do with the 2 copies of Fake Explosion, because this is related to reactors. You can summon a reactor from this, and it prevents monsters from being destroyed. So if you just imagine the situation, you summon or set your trap reactor and you also have your spell reactor in your hand. You set Fake Explosion, your opponent goes to attack, you use Fake Explosion, get summon reactor out. Then the next turn, you summon Spell Reactor and go straight into Skyfire. So that is the reason for running Fake Explosion. It also stalls your opponent a bit, so that's good. Then 2 copies of Call of the Haunted to get stuff out of your graveyard and use them again. Then 2 copies of Threatening Roar, because you can chain this to almost anything except Night Beam. So, it stops your opponent from using your battle phase. Your opponent's monsters don't matter in this turn. You can get rid of them quite easily. So all you need to do is stall them and nothing else. Then we have Gear. I only have 1. I'd run more if I had more, but I only have 1. So this summons 2 Gear No monsters from your deck and increases their levels by 1. You can only activate 1 of these per turn, but that 1 turn is all that you need to activate this, because then that goes into quite a few cards. So then Compulsory Evacuation Device, because this can also stop OTKs dead in their tracks. And Malevolent Catastrophe, because it's the last thing your opponent expects, because they attack, then they lose all their spells and traps. So that is the main deck done and dusted. There is no side deck. This is just a fun deck that I play. It's nothing serious. But for the synchros, the only synchros I actually play in this deck are 2 copies of Dark Flaptop, because this gets out Skyfire, gets out reactors. When it's destroyed, you can special summon a level 5 or lower machine type monster from your hand, so that could be potentially anything. And then, with the hopes of the next ban list riding on this card, 2 copies of Dark Strike Fighter. It's a wonderful card. I was so upset when this card got banned, but I was also not surprised, because I used this card in every deck just to attack them and then just tribute all the monsters I actually had out just to end the game. And I mean, yes, it's in Japan, it's coming off the ban list and being reprinted to a once per turn thing during your main phase 1. So you can't do this in your main phase 2 at all anymore, as of the date that they reprint this card. And then just a Lavalval Chain and our Adris, because these are the only XCs that I've actually been bothered to actually run this deck, because it's not big on XCs monsters. Lavalval Chain just gets all the cards that you need into either top deck them or into the graveyard, and Adris is just a really good card to get your opponent's monsters out of the way. So that concludes the deck profile. I hope you like it. I won't be doing any more deck profiles for the rest of this format, because the next ban list should be announced fairly soon, or just leaked a bit, and I just want to wait until then to do more decks. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe.